speaks at Nerd Nation, he's an orator, so he often picks a different topic, explores it, and then comes and does a presentation. So it's quite a valuable resource to have, really. So I'll just get his slides up and we'll get going.
Thank you. Good. So my talk today is going to be on Robert Cialdini's 6 Principles of Persuasion. Not sure if anyone knows these. They're also known as the 6 Weapons of Persuasion, and it's a cult classic on American MBA courses. The first principle is the reciprocal rule. If somebody does something for you or gives you something, you may feel that you owe them a debt, and you'll feel unsatisfied until you've given them something back or you've done something for them in return. A simple example of this is if someone buys you a drink, you feel you should buy them a drink back. Companies know this, and that is why they do not mind giving out free samples, free gifts, first membership free, first month free, etc. The second principle is commitment and consistency. When you make a commitment, you like to honour it, regardless of if new information shows that you shouldn't honour it, because you do not like to be inconsistent. Now the way this is exploited by politicians is when you're canvassing, the golden rule is to ask someone, will you vote for me, number 1? If you can get someone to say yes to that, the chances of them voting and the chances of them voting for you increase dramatically. The next principle is social proof. We all look to others for guidance. It is said that 95% of us are imitators, 5% initiators. In TV shows like The Big Bang Theory, they use canned laughter, where they have sound of a studio audience laughing, and it's spread all around the show. It has been shown over and over again, when they use canned laughter, audiences laugh more than when they don't use canned laughter. The next principle is liking. When you like somebody, you are much more likely to listen to them, trust them, and believe them. We tend to like people who we perceive to be like us. So in the last few weeks, I've read 2 or 3 interviews where David Cameron has made a point of saying that he watches Game of Thrones. Now, I don't believe he watches Game of Thrones, but whether he does or not is irrelevant. The questions weren't about Game of Thrones, and he threw it in there. The thinking behind this is very simple. He knows people will read that, go, I watch Game of Thrones. He watches Game of Thrones. Maybe he's like me. Maybe he's not such a bad guy. And then they might vote for him. The next principle is authority. Again, we like to listen, believe and trust people in positions of authority. And our advertisers and marketers know this. So you'll often see doctors, dentists and scientists in TV ads. They're not real doctors, dentists and scientists. They're actors pretending to be, but we tend to listen to them and believe them to be doctors and dentists and scientists. The final principle is scarcity. When our opportunity to acquire something is diminishing, we want it more. So you'll often see things like last few remaining. When they're gone, they're gone. Ryanair now uses a thing where you'll see only 5 seats left. There could be 50 seats left, but that little thing, only 5 seats left, will kind of push you to that sale. So they are the 6 principles. I've really touched on it a tiny little bit. So the book is called Robert Cialdini, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. I may have said in the bio that I would talk about it so you wouldn't have to read it, but I'd like to encourage you all to read it. And they can be used, they are known as the principles of persuasion and the weapons of persuasion, because they can be used for good or for ill. And that's my speech. Any questions? Yeah?
Which is your favourite?
My favourite? I think the reciprocal rule is my favourite. Yeah.
Any reason why?
Yeah, I think it's my favourite because he also says in the book that once you know the principles and you know that people are using them to exploit you, then you should allow yourself not be exploited by them. So since I've read about it, when people do give me stuff now, I don't feel the need to give it back to them. He gives a good example of the reciprocal rule in the book too. He said a professor studying it. Huh?
No one will buy you a drink.
Yeah, tweet and I'll give you a free drink.
Well, try it. See, you'll still get bought the drinks. You'll still get bought them, you know. In the book, he had a professor who tested it out, got a phone book, and randomly posted people Christmas cards that he never met, and he started getting Christmas cards back from them. You know, so it does work if you want something. You know. Any other questions?
got something to do with NLP?
What's NLP?
Neuro-linguistic
program.
program.
No, I don't
Big
think
in the 80s. That was all about changing people's behaviour through the way you sort of interact and communicate with them.
Yeah, I don't think it is. They reckon the principles go back to when people lived in tribes, and when you were living in small groups of 200 to 300 people, you had to do them to survive. And if you didn't do these things, if they weren't drilled into you, you'd be kicked out of the group. Like, so if someone was doing something for you and you weren't doing something back for them, you'd get a bad name. If you were making commitments and not honouring them, you'd get a bad name. And then it's group dynamics, and then the like and the authority and the scarcity. So they reckon it's not. I think in the 80s people might have took these on and tried to push them out in a non-scientific way that didn't work. But this isn't. No, it's not that.
Interesting.
Yeah.